Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this very viral, very short snippet of Donald Trump at a rally in New Hampshire telling voters that he has enough support. Don't vote. Don't worry about voting. You got to watch the votes being counted. So, um, when I saw it, I'm like, I don't think any context could make this good. But I decided to do my due diligence and to look up a fuller context. And it's not any better. But I want to show you guys so we can all say that we did our due diligence. Anyway, so we'll be talking about that. And Jenna Ellis actually flipped on Trump, and she's one of his lawyers, and she was charged in the RICO case in Georgia. So that's four, I believe, so far that have flipped, which I'm not surprised. That's why they set it up that way, so people would flip and then testify. And some people have some harsh words for Jenna Ellis, who's no longer supporting Trump anyway, and he wasn't supporting her financial bills and stuff either. But she raised a lot of money, or raised, I guess most people would deem it as a lot of money, but is it enough for what she would have needed for the total lawsuit and everything going forward? Was it a good deal, etc., etc.? We'll talk about that stuff today. Also, this cool interview that was on the BBC. They had an international lawyer on talking about international law, and I thought it was a good interview. And they corrected the record with a lot of things that people have been saying in regard to the war in Gaza, and that needed to be said. So it's worth watching. So anyway, before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Cost to stream, cost to run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate you. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can 10 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats, and I do read the super chats, as long as they're not like crazy or something vulgar or whatever. If you type that kind of stuff, you're probably gonna get a big block, but just throwing that out there. Also check out different merch that we have available at blacktnews.com, different shirts. Like I have this pro-choice men are sus shirt, and that came into play yesterday. I talked a little bit when I came on about this guy from TikTok who wrote the craziest comment. So I wrote a longer post on YouTube about it, and I posted a reply on TikTok that's longer. I posted a short on YouTube, and I posted did a post, and even people who are pro-choice like agreed with me, because this young man, younger than I am but still an adult, said that it's wrong to force women to keep a child when it's the biological equivalent of brushing your hair or getting a massage, because it's just dead, it's just cells or whatever. And like, my mom's had a lot of massages. In no scenario did any of us pop into existence after she had got a massage or something like that. And I just reiterated that whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, women who've had miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, or abortions themselves know that there is a bigger deal biologically and morally than just wiping away some cells, your own cells. And I even made the point that many people are pro-choice because they know that it is such a hard thing, and they don't, if a woman feels that she's in that circumstance where she needs an abortion, they don't want her to have to they don't want to give her grief to the point where she has to sit up and justify her actions because they kind of feel that's too invasive. And that's why so many people are like, it's a private matter, it's a private issue, and it's not your business. And they don't really want people to talk about it, keep good records. And I mean, that's kind of going into the more the lobby and other stuff. But most people just kind of want it to be like, I don't like it, I wouldn't do it, but that's them. But if it was a simple thing, if there was no kind of moral or biological value or whatever to these to your offspring, um, it it really would be like, oh, I got a mole removed or something like that. But it's not like that. So I'm not gonna say that I've never heard women, usually young girls, talk about that kind of stuff, but usually comments like that come from guys. And I don't like to play into the, men shouldn't have an opinion on abortion thing. I don't like it. I think men, everyone's free to have an opinion on anything. We have free speech. People can say whatever they want to say. But sometimes when dudes have takes like that, I just question them, like, what is this? Just like, I don't know, fun afternoon? You want some, clicks and or something on TikTok to get some views and some cash sent to you on TikTok live or something. Like, what's the motivation there, equating a dead baby to your snipped ends of hair or something. So anyway, that's one of the many reasons why I made that shirt. There are others, but it just reminded me of what happened yesterday. I also have, mugs and other stuff like that. Check out some of my books that I have available on Black Tea. Well, if you go to blacktnews.com and go to the merchandise page, there's a banner at the top. You take my book website, which is ninjadustpublishing.com. You guys can just find me on Amazon. I was actually going through some of my inventory today that I have because I have a convention coming up very soon. And it's November the 10th to the 12th. And at Motor City Comic Con. So if you're in the Metro Detroit area and you plan on going, you can just let me know. So anyway, well, not let me know, but if you come, you can come by the table. I don't know the table number. Again, if you're coming by to troll with politics or whatever, I will kindly say hello and move on because I'm there to sell some books. Anyway, let's hop to it. I don't have anything funny to show you guys today, but I'm sorry, I was reading a comment. With abortion, I say let them eat cake. They know what they are doing. I think I don't know, it depends on the person. I think obviously a lot of women must know to some degree, but you can still, because a lot of women who actually have had abortions have carried a child to term. At least, especially when I'm more familiar with Michigan numbers in specifically. Um, but yeah, there's a large number of women who've carried children to term, so they know. But it's amazing how people can kind of suppress truth or disassociate to justify however they're feeling or what they want to do, etc. Um everybody notes that it's a complicated matter, that it's no small thing, even people who are pro-choice, and that's why they wanted to be safe, legal, and rare. And that's why they want to, everybody just, it's not your business, because they don't want people to talk about it, etc. Because it is a hard thing. But why is it a hard thing is the question. If it's just a clump of cells, if there's no moral value, if it's just a potential life and not a life with potential, then it shouldn't be hard. Again, it's not a big deal removing brushing your hair is not a big deal, as the person originally said it. But anyway, I'm going to start off with this Trump thing. And so why is the title is 2024 doomed? And I'm sorry if I've used it before. This thing that Trump said was one of the worst things you could possibly say. And so it's so bad that I had to go ahead and try to do my due diligence anyway. But when I saw it, I'll just play it and go from there. But then we're gonna watch, the stream of the live streams for a little further back so we can get fuller context to see, you know, was there something else going on that needed to be said or whatnot, because this is a snippet. Never Back Down, that's a DeSantis super PAC, is the one who's clipped this, and it's being spread around, and people are like, what the heck? So when there's a very, very, very tiny clip of something, I think it's good to go and say, okay, what happened like a minute before this, a minute after this? What are they leaving out? Because there could be some context there, and that's missing. And these Never Back Down is obviously anti-Trump because they're pro DeSantis, RNC War Room or whatever. They post stuff, snippets, and they'll be really short because they want to make the White House or whoever look as bad as possible. Democrats, of course, do that to Republicans, etc. So just giving you some advice. If there's a little teeny snippet of something, and I mean if it's really short, go ahead and look up and see if there's more to it. So I decided to do that. So we will go on a journey together, right? We'll go on the journey. But here's the first snippet that I saw that made me say, oh dear Lord.
So we have to be careful. You got to get out there and you got to watch those voters. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes. You got to watch election.
Yeah. So very short clip, right? But don't worry about voting. We got enough people voting. We got to watch the votes. So the kindest interpretation of this would be, well, obviously he's concerned about election fraud, and you want to make sure that you have election day volunteers watching things. And you might say, oh, I got to stand at the polls and whatnot. And he's saying, don't worry about voting. So he apparently thinks there's going to be such overwhelming numbers, perhaps in New Hampshire, not obviously everywhere, but perhaps he's talking specifically in New Hampshire because he's in New Hampshire saying these things, and that, that they have a safe margin of people. So don't worry about having to get out in the polls that day. Go there to go vote yourself. Make sure that you're there. Actually, they're watching them count the votes, watching them actually vote. So someone doesn't steal it, I guess, is the interpretation. I think that's the most charitable way to look at that. If someone else has an idea, you can let me know. But even at the most charitable reading of it, it's really dumb. It's really dumb. I don't know what else to tell you guys. I can't be nice about it. I think I'm kind of being nice about it, but it's really bad. Okay, so I worked for the Michigan Republican Party in 2016. We got Trump elected. He won Michigan in 2016, right? So when I worked there at the Michigan Republican Party, they told us, go vote early. They told us, you're going to be too busy on election day. Make sure that you vote early, because they had people who were watching the polls, people working in the office who were collecting phone calls from people who were watching the polls so they could log stuff. They were driving out election day operation, because they collect all this data from people who are likely voters, people who say they're going to vote, and they're tracking hey, did you vote and whatever, and trying to push people to go out there and do so. So there's a big, huge election day operation, going on. One of the reasons why I'm not too fond of multiple day votings and stuff, I'm like, if you don't have a I think it makes it easier for people with a lot of money to be able to handle a multi-day operation. But if you're a smaller campaign and you're trying to shoot your shot, it's very expensive. I think the longer you have to actually do the election day operation stuff, when it's not just a day, when it's 2 weeks out or something or whatever. So anyway, they told us to vote early, and so it was the first time that I voted early. And this was before, in Michigan now you can get an absentee vote ballot any reason. You can actually even register on the same day that you vote. That we changed our constitution for that. So anyway, they say mostly young people. Well, I don't know, mostly young people, but a lot of young people took advantage of that, according to our Secretary of State. So But side note, did you know like people from Michigan say that strangely? There's a guy on TikTok who talks about Michigan accents, and we don't say secretary of state, it's secretary of state or something like we anyway, so just side note, so I went to like the clerk's office in Michigan or whatever. I mean, in where I live in the city, and got requested a ballot because you could still request it. It's very easy to get an absentee ballot anyway. You're going to be out of town, you can get an absentee ballot. At least I suppose it's easier now, but it was pretty easy before they decided to start shifting the Constitution or whatever. So I got my ballot and I voted early, and I didn't love the idea of it because I guess part of me was like, what if something happens? But that was just me being paranoid. I guess other people didn't feel the same way about it. But I went ahead and I voted early, left it there, wasn't in any kind of drop box. It was directly there with the clerks and stuff, and that was that. And that's how I voted in 2016. So I could be part of the election day operation. Um, I did not. I wasn't a field person, so I was actually in the office, doing a lot like online graphic stuff, making graphics and other things like that. We had a long night. Everybody had a long night that night, 2016, and there we had an overwhelming win. There were some graphics that we didn't know we were gonna have all the victories that we had. I was like still making graphics because they were like, you gotta make this one, you gotta make this one. We just we totally like swept that election. But a lot of people were angry at Democrats, like because of Bernie Sanders, how they treated him, etc. There are people who went out that are Democrats that I know that just voted straight party ticket Republican, and which is funny because they wanted to get rid of straight party ticket, and the people in the office actually told me that straight party ticket actually helped Republicans in that election. But yeah, we just voted early. And so Trump saying, "Yeah, you don't worry about voting. We got enough people. You got to watch the votes or whatever." It's crazy because what if it's a slim margin? What if you don't have as many people who are enthused as you think, that are going to vote, and you're just depressing your election day voting? Why not just tell people to vote early? And he's been iffy on the mail himself and has expressed like, I don't like it, which inspires fear in people to them not liking it. Like I heard from people who worked within the party and stuff who said GOP had a really good absentee program, and Trump kind of crushed it a bit with some of his rhetoric. And and they had good numbers of people coming out election day, but things happened. My dad was actually too sick on election day to go vote in 2020 because they said he had COVID. He went to he was sick. He went to the doctors the next day, and they put him on the COVID floor before they even like tested him. But he was in there for a while. So um if you can, vote early, that's not a bad thing. But him saying you should never discourage anyone when you want to win an election and tell them not to vote. I lost a primary in what was that, 2014, by 6 votes. Now, you don't see like margins that small for like a presidential or something, but you could definitely see that for other races where it could be a couple votes. Trump winning by like 10,000 votes in 2016. That's a slim margin of victory there. Just a handful of places, cup to some thousands of votes. The difference between him sitting in the White House or Hillary Clinton. So it's wild to say those things. It's absolutely wild and irresponsible, and not how you would obviously win an election, be the nominee. And it's not like he hasn't been president before. It's not like he hasn't been the GOP nominee before. He's been through this whole ride. And I don't see another reason to say it other than he's mouthing off, and he said a stupid thing because sometimes he says and thinks stupid things. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys, play a little bit more of the video so you guys can know what was going on before he said what he said. But I know I said, like, when there's a little snippet, you go and you look for the context, and that's what I did. I think, to be fair, Never Back Down, there really was no other context, but you guys can judge for yourself. But it's not good. It's not wise. So here we go.
And all of them put together. They have so many different groups, but we got the highest rating that we've ever had. We had a 92% rating for approval, job approval, or taking care of our great vets. Al was a big help, but everyone, the VA, everyone said there's never been anything close. And you look at second place, it was like 51%. Nobody's ever done that job, and it's an honor. You have a lot of vets up here. It's an honor to have done it. It's an honor to have done it. We're going to be building a big VA hospital up here, too, which you don't have. You know, I think you're the only state that doesn't have one. And we had that all set to go. But then we had a little election that went astray. So we have to be careful. You got to get out there and you got to watch those voters. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes. You got to watch election night. You know, it used to be election day, election night. Now it's election month. Now it's election period. Some of these things go on for 53 days. It's terrible. We want to bring it back. Same day voting, paper ballots, right? Voter ID, voter ID. Let me see if you're there. Voter ID. But today I'm very pleased to receive the endorsement of a very special person, Belknap County Sheriff Bill Wright. Thank you, Bill. Where's Bill?
So
Where's Bill?
yeah, that's how we went into it, you know. So that little snippet from Never Back Down was enough context, but I wanted to do my due diligence. I wanted to be fair, and I still, will stand by that advice. You guys should, when there's little snippets like that, try to find out where the rest of the context is. And I've, there's a couple of things that have been said with Trump at these rallies that this isn't the first time we've gone through this circus. Yeah, it's saying, oh, this to me, honestly, I can't speak to the man's motivation. Um, but it kind of seems like it's they're gonna try stuff. So he wants people more invested in this fraud than the actually obtaining the victory, because you can't obtain the victory if people don't actually vote. So if people are already prepped, like, oh, they're gonna take it, they're gonna steal it, they're gonna do this, we got to be there, we got to stop them, and they and something happens, there's just more grievance culture. And even if he doesn't win, he did not win. It was just stolen. So that continues on with the the narrative, and he can never lose. He can never lose if you don't believe that he actually lost. And even with that, I don't understand saying you don't have to vote, because you could still try to win at the same time prepping the narrative for, if you lose, you didn't really lose. Um, Unless he would rather just play the game and lose than actually obtain victory and govern. But I don't think it's that deep. I think he just said a dumb thing and thinks things, or doesn't think about what he's saying. A lot of times it just mouths off and is just ripping and or I'm sorry, riffing rather, and this really ridiculous thing came out of his mouth. um I don't think I hope people don't take him literally on that. I hope people don't take him too seriously on that, and I because I think most people be like, "No, we should vote." Um because before narratives would be like, "Oh, well they try stuff, but we have to overwhelm them so much that we will, win, and we have to vote beyond the probability or of them cheating or something like that," which I've heard him say, and I've heard other people say that as well. So I'm not saying that I think the "you shouldn't vote, don't worry about it" is like his campaign mantra, but you heard it exited his mouth for no good reason. For no good reason. For no good reason. And I think no good reason is the charitable position that he just didn't think about, and he's just riffing and saying dumb things. Because I think the only other um it just gets either more incompetent or um or self-sabotage. And neither one is good, guys. Neither one is good. Neither is good. You guys are quiet in the chat today. um I was at a baby shower for my sister, well, her for her baby anyway. And my I had mentioned on my sister brought up the fact that my numbers had upticked in my subscriptions, and uh, and I mentioned that they went down a little bit. Well, I think she mentioned they had went down a little bit after I had made a post about Trump that wasn't, very favorable. And my aunt, who's a Democrat, was like, "Oh, you said something about Trump?" And then I'm like, I always say things about people. If they're wrong, they're wrong. If they're right, they're right. And my sister said something to that, degree as well. Like, eh, I'm just speaking my mind, whether I'm on your team or I'm not. And Trump has frustrated me so much as of late. And this is again, I when you work election day operation stuff, you just vote early, and then you get your volunteers, and and not just people too. The thing that Republicans need to do is make sure that they have people who apply to actually work the elections, and not just the people who are poll watching. Those people are important, but to actually apply to work that day, and people pay you pretty well to work at those elections. But in the case of like areas like in Detroit and stuff, you know they paid very well. So they sign up somebody, and then they get a friend of their friend to sign up, and they get a friend of their friend to sign up, or family and whatever. So as opposed to it being like even number of like Republicans and Democrats, it's a lot of people who know each other, who maybe they're all Democrats basically, but hey, they're there to get paid. So you really need competent state parties and stuff to try to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, there's state parties all across the country that have been just decimated, including mine in Michigan. And it's just a tough situation right now. And to be frank, a lot of that decimation is because of Trump. I'm not going to go into the whole thing today, but a lot of that echoes from him. From him. So 2024 is going to be rough. And I think it's going to be particularly rough for Trump. But if he's the nominee, I'm not saying it's not impossible for him to win, because Biden is so terrible. But besides Trump's legal troubles that will be dominating the news, um, there's also the fact that he just puts his foot in his mouth many times. And in what he said, he's definitely said worse, but this is something like the logistics of actual victory just isn't good. Um, and it's just it's more than not good. It's incompetent. And um, He should never say this again. And he won't. It doesn't matter if he never says it again. It's out there. People are spreading it, but they're spreading it as a negative to him. I think voters are smart enough to not heed that advice. Just go make sure that you vote early if you want to do election day operation stuff. And by the way, there's a lot of delegates, um, like people who are voted to be precinct delegates, um, all over the country. And all over the country, I would say that precinct delegates have always been like, oh, we need more power, the precinct delegates, and we actually run the party, or we should be running the party, we're the voice of the party, etc. And in Michigan, like the grassroots, the precinct delegates, they're the ones who really, had an uprising and stuff. And they took over the establishment, the big money donor people, and now we have no money at the state party and stuff. Um, for all the people who really want that kind of power, you could to make a really big difference if all those precinct delegates would actually go to their precincts on election day, pass out information. Like you could on different like ballot initiatives or the voters themselves, that could make all the difference in the world. Do you know how many people go to the voting booth and maybe they know they're going to vote, I don't know, for the governor candidate or the president candidate or whatever, but maybe they don't know who's on the school board. They don't know, like, or maybe you could give them last minute information that'll make them change their mind on the bigger top of the ticket. But there's other seats that are important too, where they have no information. Maybe they try to find it, but nobody even has a Facebook page, and you have like a bit of information that could sway the outcome of that election. If people are just in particular precincts doing their job. Like, what if Prop 3 that passed in Michigan, if there are people, I mean, there's people who are go to the different polling places and pass out information and try to convince or whatever. But what was actually like on the ballot versus what they actually voted for is vastly different. And people didn't know that. People didn't know that. So I'm sure there are people out there, but people at every precinct, no, people, we don't do that. We don't organize like that. And a lot of people will sign up to precinct delegates and do nothing with it. Or sometimes they'll just come to a big convention to vote in who's going to be the party leadership and then never be heard from again. So the people who are like, oh, this is our party, and don't do the actual election day operation stuff, I guess I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out. What are you doing to actually make the difference on election day? And make sure you vote. Anyway, let's move on. Still talking about Trump though. So Jenna Ellis ended up flipping. Jenna Ellis was another lawyer for Trump who she uh well, she's been pro DeSantis for a minute, so she's been, quite the annoyance for the Trump campaign, or at least in the Twitterverse that I've been seeing and stuff. But she was also charged in the Georgia case and under the RICO charges. So there's been at least 4 people who have flipped. I'm not totally surprised that she flipped. Now, when she got charged, she did a GoFundMe, or Gifts and Go rather, and a lot of people did, and there's a lot of big accounts who are passing it along because they're like, Jenna's a good person, she's my friend, etc. And so she raised like $220,000, I think. So people are criticizing her for taking the plea deal because they're like, oh, the fine she's gonna have to pay is like $5,000, but she raised $220,000 or whatever. So I'm assuming with that money that she raised, that she got a competent attorney, which attorneys, especially if you're competent, tend to be expensive, and anything probably attached to Trump is probably terribly expensive. Because there's a lot of messiness involved. Trump as a client, extremely messy, goes up there, says, whatever. He's just a difficult client, I would assume, to deal with. Um, isn't, very gag order respectable, and that he just can't self-censor a lot of the time. Um and then everything is so political as well. So I'm assuming anyone really attached to this, whether you're directly representing Trump or representing someone else, it's probably going to be expensive. So I don't know how much her lawyer was, but I'm assuming she took money that she raised to pay for a lawyer, and they helped cut with the plea deal. So which the point of doing the RICO thing is to get people to flip, and they'll, instead of, a mandatory 5 years or something, they will get no jail time and testify and say an apology. Like, that's a good deal for most people, that they would probably take, whether they really felt they were guilty or innocent or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and play her statement that she tearfully gave and go from there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hope.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
So I've seen Jenna say things like, I could tell you where the dead bodies are buried, but didn't seem like she was willing to flip. This is prior, I think, to the RICO charges and stuff. And I'm not terribly surprised that she's flipped. I just wonder how much, and I guess I've mentioned this and talked about this before, like, I'm not surprised people would flip, but I just question what they would be able to say to speak to Trump's state of mind of whether or not he legitimately believed that he had lost, or what kind of evidence that they can present. I guess if they flip everyone and they say, yeah, he knew that he lost, but he still wanted to pursue it anyway, then I suppose it's a pretty credible maybe situation to the jury. But I don't know if you can like speak to what is in the man's heart or not, but there are people who lawyers who've already testified as far as like the J6 committee stuff, and Trump's own people said, yeah, the lawyers thought that the electors thing wasn't going to work out, and which is terribly frustrating for me, because you guys know, at least if you follow me for a minute, that I know some of the people who have been charged in the electors case in Michigan, and know some of them quite well. And I know that Trump isn't helping them, at least last I heard of anything, but and they're pretty much on their own, and it really upsets me. So it really upsets a lot of people. I think some people I've heard are more upset about the RNC not doing much, but I know Trump has a lot of cases, but he could definitely do some more for people who put their neck out on the line for him, for a plot that his lawyers didn't believe was going to work. But speaking again to Trump being a bad person to represent in his mouth, I think it was the interview that he had on Meet the Press. I don't think it was a Megyn Kelly interview. I think it was a Meet the Press interview when they talked about these cases and different things that his lawyers had said, like the challenges weren't going to go anywhere, especially after a certain period of time. And Trump was like, "Yeah, I don't respect them, so I got rid of them, or I got other lawyers or whatever." So it just like, okay, you don't like what your lawyers are telling you, so if you don't like what they're going to say, you just find new lawyers who would tell you what you want to hear. And I don't know if if the jury here is if they play that snippet like, during the trial as some kind of evidence. And they're like, see, it's not that the truth hasn't been told to him. It's just that he won't accept anything that's not going to get him the results that he wants. Whether it doesn't matter if it's true, doesn't matter if it's false. He just wants to drive a narrative and push, his desires forward and defraud the good people of Georgia, defraud the people of America, and so on. So, and by the way, this trial is, I guess, is going to be seen on TV and stuff. So I think I don't know if how everything is set up and how they're going to have so many of Trump's people testifying against him. I think this will be kind of more about the public opinion rather than uh the legitimacy of like the charges or how they're set up and etc. I think you know I think he's in a tough spot with Georgia, and if he is charged, he cannot pardon himself. Even if he won and was a president, and Kemp can't pardon him either. There has to be some kind of panel or whatever. Um, so that this is a rough case for him. Even though I think the Florida case is more legitimate, he's likely to have a more favorable jury. Though that case is not good for him. All the merits of the case. I don't care how many times he says Presidential Records Act. There's literally recording of him saying that he didn't declassify certain things that he allegedly showed to people. So, which I think he mentioned something. Yeah, he mentioned that in the New Hampshire rally. I started from the beginning and then got to that point where. So yeah, he did mention the Presidential Records Act, and Joe Biden wasn't the president, and he went through that whole spiel. Anyway, I want to read something that Katrina Pearson wrote about Jenna Ellis. Katrina used to work for President Trump in his campaign and stuff back in 2016, and she's posted some. I don't think she's still in the Trump train list. From my impression of a lot of her posts as of recent. But this is heartbreaking. So many people left for dead on the battlefield are now fighting for their freedom and to preserve their livelihoods while being wrongly vilified in the process. She is completely right to accept a minimal plea and get on with her life. Let me explain to you how this works. All of the lawyers previously had asserted attorney-client privilege, but there is an exception to that called crime fraud, where if the lawyer is party to the crime, there is no privilege. So even if the DA gets everyone a stupid charge, it forces privilege to be broken. Jenna has for 3 years refused to testify, invoking privilege and protecting her client. So the only way Fannie forces her to testify is to indict her on an insane RICO charge and then offer a nothing plea that accomplishes her goal, compelling testimony. Jenna agreed to testify truthfully in exchange for her freedom, which most would do in a heartbeat. It's so easy to be a keyboard warrior and backbencher. No one knows anything except for those who were physically involved and are totally speculating otherwise. This case isn't legal, it's political. So that's her comments on Jenna flipping. And you also had a trying to think of the woman. Sidney Powell also flipped as well. And Trump was saying that Sidney Powell was never his lawyer, which people have gone back in time and found tweets of when she joined on or whatever. And Trump did refer to her as being part of the legal team. So, he's trying not to claim her now, which reporters have asked, like, okay, if she was never part of your legal team, then there is no attorney-client privilege, right? Like, that's not a thing if she's not actually your lawyer, right? So, he just, I don't think he should, talk about these things. I don't think he's doing himself much favor. Now, maybe he's doing himself favors in the court of public opinion as far as Republicans in the primary and who they will still go out and vote for, because people feel like it is all political and that he's done nothing wrong. Trump keeps asserting he's done nothing wrong, and they're like, oh, he's just a big martyr. And if enough people believe that and are impassioned, like, okay, they're going after him, so we have to fight harder and make sure that we own the libs again and make sure that he's the nominee. I think Trump feels like he has to talk to speak to the base to get those voters. But I do think the Democrats are playing a bit of 4D chess here, and they want everyone to be passionate and defend Trump and see his numbers go up. Trump was joking about, oh, they can't indict me anymore because the numbers go up. They called the Justice Department called and said, oh, we got to stop indicting him because the numbers keep going up. Like, and it's funny. It's just, he's a great showman. I love The Apprentice, and the rallies are fun. But the truth is that they very much would like for him to be the nominee, because they know things like this Georgia case will be aired in the height of like the election and stuff, and people in Georgia, a state where you're going to need to win, are going to be people will be watching all across the country, but they're going to hear about these plots, as they'll call them, and say that he was trying to overthrow the will of the people. And maybe there's going to be people on the right who won't buy that narrative, but you just need basically the Democrats and the independents to feel that way. And he's already telling Republicans not to vote, so I don't know what to tell you guys. But I do expect more people to flip, especially if they can get no jail time, and it's a choice between like mandatory 5 years or something at the minimum or whatever versus no jail. Jenna Ellis probably won't be the last. I don't know about Rudy or somebody flipping like that, but I'm not surprised about Jenna, but it's not great stuff for Trump. It's not, and you can be as gung-ho as you want to be about him, but I'm just gonna be honest with you guys now. It's not saying he can't win, not saying he can't overcome, but it's not good. It's not good. Moving on, I want to play this interview from the BBC. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I go through that, I do want to play this clip of Vivek. He was on the Young Turks, and they did talk about the cases with Trump, and he started off talking about how the voters, it's political, the voters should decide, and then within the span of these few minutes, he goes to like the courts should decide whether he did was legal. And so it's a weird interview from Vivek, but I find that I don't think he posted this particular clip that's going around, but whether I see a clip and it's not good for him or not, Vivek will post it. I guess maybe he just interprets it differently than I do.
A slate of fake electors to overturn the results of our democratic process and go against the will of the American voters.
So look, I think that there were serious issues that need to be discussed relating to election integrity. However, I would not have made those same judgments that Donald Trump did. This, though, belongs to the voters. This is a judgment for the voters of this country, not a judgment for a justice system that lands people in prison as its ultimate goal, especially political opponents. I just think that's bad for the United States of America.
Okay.
So leave it to the voters. Trust the voters to make the decision of who governs, instead of trying to take it out of the voters' hands. And I don't think that should be a controversial idea.
Yeah, it's definitely controversial, because what you're saying is
leaving it to the voters is controversial.
No, not that. Hold on.
When the former president broke laws, including going against the will of the American voters by implementing a slate of fake electors, which were noted as such in memos passed around within the Trump campaign. They were referred to as fake and fraudulent electors by Trump's co-conspirators. That is part of the evidence. Another piece of evidence that I think is compelling, to say the least, is that they had fake electors in the state of New Mexico, which had absolutely no pending litigation in regard to election fraud.
We have a court and a legal system, and if you want to go into the details of this, the First Amendment absolutely protects, and courts have held this for a long time, dating back to a case called Alvarez, I think it was in 2012, that political officials, including candidates for election, unfortunately, like it or not, have the First Amendment right not to tell the truth. That's just a fact. It's not something that we should necessarily.
So Donald Trump was lying. So Donald Trump was lying.
That's for the courts to decide. But what I'm telling you guys, so then
he should be tried. If it's for the courts to decide, and we live in a country of laws, and he's being charged with a very important criminal act, why do you get to decide instead of the court system and say, oh, just let him off? Who cares what that evidence is?
Because nobody else has been charged under the same set of facts.
Because no one else tried to do a coup against America with a fake elector scheme. Do you know a second person who's ever been accused of that?
We've had contested elections dating back to the late 1800s in this country, and a lot.
Yeah, but no one ever did fake electors and tried to do a coup, Vivek. So are you saying, because this is really important, because good for the goose is good for the gander. So you're saying Joe Biden on his way out can take any national secrets and show them to anyone he likes. Maybe you could even sell them, whatever. He could just take them. Who cares?
He can sell them.
And hold on.
I'm very clear about this.
Okay.
Can't sell them.
Okay, all right. But if Donald Trump is charged with selling them, are we allowed to try him then? Or do we just have to let him go no matter what he's charged with?
So, yeah, I think, I didn't think he looked great in that exchange with them. So there, some of the he has 4 charges. Some of them are crazy. I think the Florida one, and I've said this many times, I think that one's going to be the legally. He's got a lot of issues, I think, with that one. And you could say, oh, well, Biden had documents, Pence had documents, other people had documents. I don't think it probably would have escalated this sort of way if Trump had just cooperated with the subpoena, not been trying to hide documents from his lawyer, saying he gave him up and didn't really. He had someone fly documents to Bedminster in New Jersey and stuff to his other place, and he's on tape talking about a document that he didn't declassify. And it's not like he didn't know he was being recorded because it was like a journalist or something. So just some big errors there, like the Bragg case. That one's dumb. So there's reasons why people have come after them that are pretty political, and I think maybe people still probably wouldn't have gone after someone else if they were in his shoes, even with the Florida stuff. Is that fair? No. But Trump said something the other day that bothered me. There's a snippet and he's like, I'll go to jail if I have to go to jail. I'll go to jail. Like that's his penance for trying to save America. And I'm like, but why didn't you just behave? And I don't mean like submit to like the swamp or something when I say behave. I'm just like, why not just, not put yourself in bad situations? Like you don't have to go to jail to prove that you're so down with America first or something. You could have just, I don't know, wrote more coherent tweets, censored yourself a little bit, given the documents back, people are trying to destroy you left and right. That. They'll never forgive you for winning in 2016. They'll never forgive him for that. Ever. They want him and everyone else to go down for helping him. They want to teach people a lesson for standing with Trump. I heard someone say today that there's a blast radius associated with him, and that's true. They want people to know it. So there's so much at risk. So you just have to protect yourself and the people around you a bit better. And he's screwed up sometimes, guys. So yeah, the courts will decide whether the voters are going to decide whether they want him or not, whether he gets convicted or not. And the courts are going to go ahead and go through the legal process, whether he's a candidate or not. And again, I'm not saying that they're not going after him so hard. I think he's a target because they hate him, sure. But at least in the Florida case, there's some legitimacy to why he's going to have some trouble. I think the Georgia case is going to be more about the appearance of if he did something wrong and how the jury feels about it, how the law is being applied, not that it is justly applied to the scenarios that they've concocted for the case. Not too dissimilar than the George Floyd case. So a lot of people are talking about it because there's another case where they came out with some stuff about there not being any signs of like, I know, compression on the autopsy, which I don't know what people are seeing now that wasn't known before, because I didn't watch the full trial, but I watched a lot of it, and especially like the closing. And I felt his Derek Chauvin's lawyer did a pretty good job, but the jury, they quickly decided, and it was Will Chamberlain was like, oh, I think Derek Chauvin's gonna get off. And as soon as the jury was like, we're back, he was like, I think he's screwed, because they came back way too fast. But I saw a snippet of the jury talk about how how basically they convicted. It came down to that they didn't care enough about George Floyd. Like, he was in their care and they didn't care enough about him. And that's what dug it into people's minds, into people's brains, and drove them to really convict him, I guess. And I worry if the jury in the I don't know, Metro Atlanta area, whatever, they just hear things about the case, and Trump wanted to, his lawyers told him that this stuff wouldn't work, that he had electors in areas where things weren't contested, and they still wanted to push and push and push, and people like warned against it, etc. If there's a ton of people who go up there and say that, even if Trump is like, I won the election, I had every right to do this, people are going to still look at it side eye and say, you tried to steal my vote, essentially, or overthrow my vote and make my vote inert or something. And that's not going to just be what the jury feels. Basically, he will be on trial before America. It'll be the most viewed trial ever, probably. So that's going to deeply impact, if he's the nominee at that point, the general election. And if you don't think it will, I think you're wrong. So I don't care how much you like the guy. It's something that you at least should consider going into the primaries, because at the end of the day, I would like Joe Biden to not be the president for another 4 years. And Trump could lose to him. He could win, but he could lose to him. And I'm just trying to be frankly honest with you guys. If that's upsets you, I don't know. It's not more upsetting than, what happened in 2020 repeating. So I could be wrong. I'll take the risk of being wrong, but I just can't be dishonest with you guys. That's just what I'd rather be wrong than not be honest about how I feel. So anyway, moving on. I want to show you guys this interview from the BBC. They had an international lawyer on talking about the situation in Israel, and a lot of people said comments about what Israel should be doing, shouldn't be doing, etc. And I think it's broken down pretty well here. So I wanted to share because this is a big narrative that I feel is really busted down.
And international law expert who also liaises with UK lawyers in Israel. And she joins me now from London. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Katia.
First of all, in this situation, good morning, this very tense situation, people are looking for glimmers of hope. One of those being the arrival of the first trucks of aid, another, the release of 2 of the hostages currently held inside Gaza. A reminder, we're 2 weeks on today from a massacre inside Israel, 1,400 people killed. The number of hostages taken into Gaza has been updated by Israel today to 210. That's in addition to the 2 who were released overnight. I was just wondering if I could ask you, from a legal perspective, how do governments go about trying to negotiate the release of these hostages? What concessions could be offered, even though we've been told in this case none were? How would it work?
Well, of course, the negotiations and the international diplomacy associated is a separate consideration entirely from the legal position. And we've heard, certainly from your reporting this morning, about international efforts behind the developments. But of course, those developments need to be seen in the context of this abduction, as you've been reporting, of over 200 hostages and those crimes of Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist organizations which have led to a humanitarian crisis. Also in Israel, where the families of these hostages know that the orders of these terrorists were specifically to target women and children for kidnap and torture. The international law aspects of this are, of course, extremely important, and myths about Israel's conduct, about international law, have been playing a significant role in this crisis and in the coverage of it. And perhaps I can be clear that from an international law perspective, Israel does not only have the right to a robust response, but under the Convention on the Prevention and the Punishment of Genocide, the crime of genocide, it also has an affirmative obligation, like the rest of the signatories to that convention, to make sure that never again means never again.
Well, as you say, under international law, Israel has the right to defend itself. As we've been saying, these attacks orchestrated by Hamas inside Israel 2 weeks ago today were unprecedented. We're talking about a massacre, as well as hostage taking of people, including women and children. Also under international law, though, as well as the right to defend yourself as a party, there are also rules of war and engagement. So it's not that you can't defend yourself, it's how you defend yourself in the situation. In this case, how Israel defends itself. And there's been a lot of concentration. We've been talking about aid today. The plight of Palestinian civilians on the ground, that siege that's been tightened on the Gaza Strip until today. No food, no water, no medical supplies, aerial bombardments day and night, aimed, Israel says, at Hamas and Hamas infrastructure. But the number of casualties amongst civilians has been very, very high.
Well, let me pick up, if I may, on those points in turn. In compliance with its obligations under international law to minimize civilian casualties, Israel is issuing warnings of where it will be striking Hamas terrorist infrastructure. It's a practice used by all law-abiding countries. It is telling them to leave in order to try to save their lives. And of course, there has also been mass evacuation of Israeli civilians from the north and south of Israel, away from the borders with terrorist organizations. But there is another myth here, that Israel has an obligation to supply Hamas terrorists with electricity and other goods, and that is without basis in international law. Israel is not required to fund or assist Hamas war efforts as it attempts to butcher Jews. And of course, since Hamas violently seized control in 2007, Israel has continued to provide a part of Gaza's fuel, electricity, water, and also medical care to Palestinian civilians that Hamas neglects and abuses. That isn't viable during a military campaign where Hamas exploits these transfers, stealing supplies and penetrating humanitarian organizations to mask its terror operations and to launder funds. And Hamas uses the electricity grid in Gaza to continue to fire missiles onto Israeli civilians. That firing has continued in the course of the last hour and your broadcasts. And of course, some of these rockets from Gaza fall short, as we saw with the Al Ali Hospital car park. In the case of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a third of the rockets fired in the last exchange of theirs fell short, killing many Gazan civilians. But I must stress in relation to your question, there is no requirement to provide resources. International law only requires that Israel facilitate the passage of food and medicine by third parties if such goods can be reliably delivered without diversion to Hamas. And we know that is not the case because Hamas controls Gaza. And in fact, the basic rules outlined by the Geneva and the Hague Conventions are that sieges are lawful unless they are deliberately aimed at starving the local population. The IDF has been repeatedly clear about its objectives: defeating Hamas, establishing a new reality in Gaza where Israel doesn't face a genocidal terror organization that has the will or capability to attack Israeli civilians, and rescuing the hostages. And if governments and international organizations...
And Natasha Hausdorff, if I could just interrupt you there. Sorry, Natasha Hausdorff, sorry to interrupt you, but you've made a number of points very clearly from your perspective.
She was killing her, man.
As you say, under international law, and I, unlike you, I am not an international lawyer. Israel, in this case, it is allowed by parties under international law, if they can argue their reasons why, to have a siege. But what is not allowed under international law is something that is alleged by aid agencies, for example, and they say that what the effect on Palestinian civilians stuck inside Gaza, they say, seems like collective punishment. Seems like collective punishment. They say collective punishment is not allowed under international law. Of course, all of these legal questions are hotly contested.
Well, it's flatly not borne out by the facts on the ground. And if these aid organizations are invested in the interests of Gazan civilians, then they should devote their resources to facilitating the safe and rapid evacuation of Gazan civilian population to the south, which Hamas has been seeking to hamper with reports of it bombing fleeing civilians. But the allegation that you have raised, Katya, is a reprehensible moral equivalence, and it is being drawn, it is utterly morally repugnant. It also attaches, of course, to the suggestion of proportionality in international law, that is about comparing casualty figures, and that is also not correct. Every strike that Israel takes, every military action is weighed up, it is analyzed to make sure that according to international law, the anticipated collateral damage, the harm to civilians, is proportionate to the military aims of a strike that is militarily necessary and legitimately targets terrorist infrastructure. So these suggestions of collective punishment are morally reprehensible, liable.
As Natasha Hausdorff, you say that these allegations aren't borne out by facts on the ground. It is objective bodies such as the International Criminal Court, for example, who are brought up in times of conflict to examine situations in every single individual case about whether the rules of law or engagement were respected in individual particular cases. But we thank you very much for your time this morning, for joining us. Natasha Hausdorff there, international lawyer, barrister who also advises UK lawyers inside Israel.
So yeah, she very politely killed her, slaughtered her. Yeah, all this, like with the water, electricity, and the food and all this stuff, I'm just like, let me not pay my electric bill and be like, DTE, this is, how dare you turn off my lights? It's a war crime. Like, it's silly. It's silly. Like you're in the battle to try to save your country from a threat that wants to just wipe them off, not just a land dispute, but wants to murder them because they are Jews. That's in the charter of Hamas. They, like, it's not a secret. and they I don't wants to help them. You're treating them a little too mean. Again, I keep saying this. I would love to liberate the Palestinians from Hamas, but that doesn't appear to be what the objective is. When people say free Palestine, it's a pretty darn good objective, but there's folks who feel that all the things that happen, the horrific things, which we talked about yesterday, which we could go into today again, but we won't because we're over time. But there's some pretty horrific things that obviously happened, that are not justifiable, but certain people apparently think that they are. As a matter of fact, there's a poll that came out by Harvard Caps Harris poll. Let me just show you this really quick before I let you guys go. This is another reason why I'm like, is 2024 doomed? Because our younger generation coming up is just I don't know what to say about it. So I'm just a little lost for words here. But voters say the killing of 1,200 civilians is not justified, but the grievances of Palestinians and the attacks on Jews are genocidal. Do you think the Hamas killings of 1,200 civilians on Israel can be justified by the grievances of Palestinians, or is it not justified? And so if you look at it like, 76% says it's not justified. When you break it down by the age groups, of that 18 to 24, 52% is actually in the can say that it was justified, and only 49 says that it was not justified. But on the other side here, do you think that the attacks on Jews were genocidal in nature or not genocidal? 62% of that same age bracket says that it was genocidal. So I'm a little confused that they think it was genocidal, but yet they think it was justified. So all this stuff is very concerning. I'm seeing I guess on a brighter note, there's a lot of conversations that I'm seeing online, even for people who were like left leaning or whatever, or maybe moderate or whatnot, how they would see people on the right talk about culture wars and all that stuff on college campuses and whatnot. And they just thought, like, I don't know, ambulance chasing to a degree, like just saying stuff for clicks or whatever. And some people do just cover things and say things for clicks or whatnot. But these were serious things to talk about and discuss. And the ideology has taken such a crazy route, and it's just attaching, and all this intersectionality stuff just comes and merges, even if all the stuff doesn't make sense. You see the Queers for Palestine, and I've seen some pretty wild stuff about, like, it's not actually the Palestinians that are against the gays, that's just a mandate left over from the British. I'm like, are you serious? I've seen some wild things, such wild things. Let me show you this that was at a rally here. This one's wild too. Oh boy. Reproductive justice means free Palestine. For those of you confused, reproductive justice is a fancy way of saying abortion, because people kind of brace when they hear that word, so they find ways to not have to say it. So they say reproductive freedom, reproductive justice, even though reproduction's already happened, the baby's been produced. That's why you want the abortion. So what does that have to do with what's going on? What does that have to do with what's going on? Nothing. But all these groups, they just merged together. and that's why you see BLM, they like take on that grievance culture stuff, and they're back in the street and they're marching with these people. And I got more comments yesterday from people saying, a Black person who supports Israel. Oh my gosh. I'm like, what does any of this has to do with me being Black? What does it have to do with anything? And they I think commented on the video where I talked about BLM and some of the comments that they've made that were crazy, particularly with the paraglider with BLM Chicago. And then I showed like Patrice Cullors stuff she had said, and connected it all kind of to get together. And I've never liked BLM. That's never been a secret. I've been talking about them for a long time. Maybe you can't find a lot of stuff back. I think even back in 2016 and stuff, I was still talking about this stuff. But I didn't have like the black tea didn't exist back then. But even like on my regular socials, maybe there's a little bit. But there are certain things I couldn't really say because I did work for the state party, and if I said stuff that they'd be in the media was like, one of your employees said such and such. So I was censored about sometimes. So but you can find a lot of stuff, me talking about BLM for a long time. I've never liked them, and I feel justified in not liking them. But it is so crazy that people just expect me to take all the civil rights grievances or whatever through the US and just channel it into this situation, when I'm like, I saw the pictures of the burned babies and bloody babies and them chasing families and shooting dads and the piles of corpses, and all read the reports of women being raped and all that stuff. So I'm sorry, I'm not gonna side with Hamas because I'm Black. It doesn't make any sense, and it continues to not make sense. When I was at my sister's baby shower and I mentioned people like saying that kind of stuff to me, man, oh man, my mom does not talk a lot, but she got heated. She was heated. And then my aunt, one of my aunts anyway, who doesn't talk much with me about politics or anything, she just thought that was crazy too. But I think that's so much of like this brainwashed generation. There's a video from Thomas Sowell. I don't know how old it is, but I saw it circulating. People say, well, what can the Jews do to get people to stop hating them so much? And he said, fail. He said, fail. They're kind of too successful to fit into the intersectional sort of family of the grievance culture stuff. Like if you want to go along with bashing Israel and all that other kind of stuff, they'll accept you. And when you rip down the posters of the hostages and whatnot. But other than that, you can have your uses until they need to stand against you for doing too well. Which, by the way, last thing I'm gonna show before I let you go, and I'm sorry, I know I already said that, but I'm a minister, so this is what we do. Sometimes we have 5 closings, so this is number 2, I guess. I'm not gonna have 5 today, but at least we're gonna have 2. The White House press secretary was asked about threats for anti-Semitism, and she immediately started talking about Islamophobia, just immediately, and didn't really answer the question, and try to downplay threats and stuff. But back in July, they were talking about anti-Semitism and stuff. So it's a big topic of conversation when they think that someone like, I don't know, some Trump supporters or something are anti-Semitic. Like, it's all the rage to talk about. But when you literally have people marching and saying some things that are not land disputes, that sound pretty genocidal, it's just kind of like, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to mention that. We just want to let that be. So let me show you this one last thing before I let you go.
level of concern right now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel.
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim Arab Americans.
I'm going to let her finish. But again, I do want to point out the question was about anti-Semitism, not Islamophobia. They just can't help themselves.
Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities, and that is something you heard the president speak to in his address just last Thursday. And so one of the things that the president has done is directed his team, Homeland Security team, to prioritize prevention and disruption of any emerging threats that could harm the Jewish, the Muslim, Arab Americans, or any other communities. And that is something that the president has sought to do and since day one. As you know, the president ran on protecting communities, obviously, but bringing people together, protecting the soul of the nation. And so that is something that the president takes very, very seriously. We're going to continue to denounce any sort of hate towards any American here. And so that's what we're going to continue to be steadfast on. Again, he has directed his Homeland Security team to make sure that they're on top of this.
Okay, so yeah.
The administration's new plan to counter anti-Semitism, as you all know, this past May, we announced a very comprehensive, once-of-a-kind anti-Semitism plan, which we think is incredibly important at this moment. The administration's new plan to...
So yeah, back in July, they had planned to stop anti-Semitism because they thought it was such a big deal, and white supremacy is like the number one threat. You know, they'll say as far as domestic terrorism or whatever, that's what they'll push in the FBI and other stuff like that. But when it's this situation going on, you see people marching saying the most awful, terrible things. It's, we don't see any credible threats. I don't blame people in the Jewish community for being concerned. I'm concerned all the way for people. I really am. I want to end with this. Norm Macdonald had this joke some time ago. What terrifies me is if ISIS were to detonate a nuclear device and kill 50 million Americans, imagine the backlash against the peaceful Muslims. So I think that goes along well with the press secretary and the question about anti-Semitism, and then going right into Islamophobia. So that goes along with some comments and stuff that Joe Biden has made as well. But anyway, I'm not going to go for, I think that was technically the third closing, so I'm not going to get to 5. Thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on the website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs for my website, all the stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. Go ahead and check out different merchandise that we have available at the store on blacktnews.com. We have mugs, we have t-shirts, we got the You Are Not That Special mug. Trigger someone in your life today. We've got black tea. We got the My Money, My Business. I opened up earlier talking about how sometimes people say like, oh, it's not your business, someone gets an abortion. I'm like, by the way, in my state, they did pass Prop 3 to make it like a constitutional right for abortion and among other things and stuff. But they're totally trying to make taxpayers pay for it, which they claim, oh, that's propaganda, whatever. They're trying it, and I don't know, they'll probably be successful because they're in the leadership and they passed something to make it happen. people just didn't know all the stuff what happened. So anyway, you can't say that it's nobody's business, but you expect everyone to participate in it. That doesn't make sense to me anyway. So that's the reason why I made this shirt, though it can apply to other things. And I got other stuff as well. Check out my different books that I have at if you just search my name on Amazon, Christina L. Barr, you'll find a lot of my books. But I write for middle grade chapter books and adults and other stuff. So go to blacktnews.com. If you go to the merchandise page, there's a banner at the top. It'll take my book website. So that's the easiest way to find out some more stuff about to find out more information about my stuff. So go ahead and check it out. Thank you guys for joining me today, and I will see you next time.